We are about to embark on a deep dive into the absolute madness that is the Dakar Rally. So, grab a coffee, or maybe a Red Bull, settle in, and let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. Because honestly, it's the last great adventure left in motorsport. So, this massive multi-million-dollar race, it's actually kind of hilarious and terrifying how it started. It wasn't some big corporate plan, it was just a guy named Thierry Sabine getting hopelessly lost. The year was 1977. Sabine was a French motorcycle racer competing in the Abidjan-Nice Rally. He was out in the middle of the Tenerife Desert when everything went wrong. He lost the pack, his compass smashed, and his watch stopped working. Just imagine that for a second. You're alone in a literal sea of sand with no way to navigate and no idea what time it is. Honestly, he was on the brink of death when a search plane finally spotted a cross of stones he'd managed to scrape together on the ground. Most of us would get rescued and never want to see a desert again, right? But he was actually obsessed with the place. He went back to France and decided he wanted to build a bridge between the civilized world in Europe and the wild landscapes of Africa. He came up with this legendary motto, a challenge for those who go, a dream for those who stay behind. So, on December 26, 1978, the very first Paris-Dakar launched, and it was total chaos. 182 vehicles, cars, bikes, and trucks all mixed together, heading out on a 10,000-kilometer trek through Algeria, Niger, Mali, Upper Volta, and Senegal. Out of those 182 starters, only 74 actually crossed the finish line in Dakar. The first guy to ever win it was Cyril Neveu, who was riding a Yamaha bike. It's crazy to think that one of the most prestigious races in the world didn't come out of a boardroom. It came out of a guy almost dying in the sand. For nearly 3 decades, the Dakar Rally was exactly what it said on the tin. You'd start in Europe, usually Paris, and race all the way down to Dakar, Senegal. That was the classic era. It was legendary. But as things often do, the world started to change. The Sahel region in Africa became a lot more unstable, and terrorist groups began moving into those remote stretches where the rally used to thrive. Then came 2008, which was honestly a shock to the system. Just a few days before the race was supposed to kick off, French intelligence stepped in and warned that there was a real, credible threat specifically targeting the rally. The rally organizers were backed into a corner. They had no choice. Teams were already in Lisbon, the cars had passed inspection, the excitement was peaking. And then, suddenly, it was just over. On the very eve of the start, they canceled the whole thing. To this day, it's the only time in history the race never actually ran. After things got too dangerous in Africa, they had to pivot fast. And in 2009, the race landed in South America. Honestly, it changed the entire vibe of the event. In Africa, you might spot a random nomad or a camel here and there, but in Argentina and Chile, it was absolutely insane. You had millions of people lining the roads. It felt less like a rally and more like a massive rock concert. The driving conditions changed just as drastically. You weren't just battling sand anymore. You were dealing with the Atacama Desert and climbing the Andes Mountains. The altitude was the real killer. We're talking stages up in Bolivia hitting 4,000 meters, or about 13,000 feet. It gave us some legendary footage though, especially the cars tearing across the Salar de Uyuni salt flats, just blinding white salt for miles. Moving the Dakar to Saudi Arabia back in 2020 was a massive shift. But honestly, I think it was exactly what the race needed. Don't get me wrong, South America was incredible, but it had a different vibe. If you broke down there, chances are a fan would pop out of the bushes and hand you a beer and a sandwich while you worked on your bike. It felt a bit crowded. Saudi Arabia changed all that. It brought back that raw, middle-of-nowhere isolation that defines the spirit of the original African roots. When you're out in the empty quarter, the Rub al Khali, you're dealing with the largest continuous sand desert on the planet. It's this stunningly beautiful but absolutely brutal landscape. If your engine gives up in the middle of those dunes, there's no one coming to share a snack with you. You're truly on your own out there, and that's what makes it feel like the real Dakar again. Let's get straight to the metal. One of the best things about Dakar is that it's not really a spec series where everyone drives the exact same car. It's basically a run-what-you-brung war zone, within the regulations, obviously. But I know the class names can get super confusing with all the T1, T2, and Rally GP jargon, so let's break it down into plain English. First up, you've got the cars, now called the Ultimate Class, formerly T1+. These are the big boys. They might vaguely resemble a Toyota or an Audi from the outside, but underneath, they are absolute spaceships. Take the Toyota GR DKR Hilux. It's the beast Nasser Al-Attiyah used to dominate in. It's running a twin-turbo V6 petrol engine plucked right out of the Land Cruiser 300, pushing about 354 horses and 457 pound-feet of torque. But the real secret sauce here is the suspension. We're talking 350 millimeters of travel and massive 37-inch tires. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the Audi RSQ e-tron, which is the electric one. Audi basically entered the desert to prove their EV tech works. But since there are no chargers in the desert, they built an EREV, extended range electric vehicle. It uses Formula E motors on the front and rear axles for instant torque, and to keep the battery juice flowing, they stuffed a 2-liter turbo engine from their DTM touring car. It's incredibly complex, filled with high-voltage cables and software, and even has safety lights to warn marshals if the car is electrically live after a crash. Next, we have to talk about the bikes, Rally GP and Rally 2. I say this with total love, but this category is for the insane. Racing a motorcycle for 2 weeks, doing 500 kilometers a day while navigating a roadbook, that is superhuman stuff. To keep speeds reasonable, they used to do 120 miles per hour on 950cc engines, but they have been limited to 450cc since 2011. The hardest part is the navigation tower on the handlebars. Imagine trying to read a digital map while riding a dirt bike off a cliff. That's their day job. Now for my personal favorite, the trucks, T5. There is nothing on Earth like seeing a 10-ton truck fly 30 meters through the air. These things are monsters, putting out over 1,000 horsepower and over 3,700 pound-feet of torque. They're electronically limited to 87 miles per hour strictly for safety, because a heavy truck crashing at higher speeds is catastrophic. For years, the Russian KAMAZ team was unbeatable, but with sanctions keeping them out, it's opened the door for Iveco and Praga. Finally, you've got the SSVs, side-by-sides, and the experimental stuff. The SSVs are split into Challenger, T3, which are fast prototypes, and the SSV T4, which are modified production vehicles like Can-Ams or Polaris RZRs. The T4 class is technically the most affordable way to enter, though you still need at least a £50,000 budget as a privateer. And looking to the future, there's the Mission 1000 class. These guys only do about 100 kilometers a day to test new tech, like the High SE project, a hydrogen buggy collab between the big Japanese brands, or the KH7 truck, which runs on a mix of hydrogen and vegetable oil to be practically zero emission while hauling tons of gear. Look, if you're trying to wrap your head around the Dakar Rally, Just think of it as the complete polar opposite of Formula One. In F1, those guys have every single millimeter of the track memorized. But in Dakar, you are basically driving blind into the unknown. The navigation aspect alone is insane. For the longest time, everyone relied on these physical paper scrolls called road books, trying to decipher those little symbols on them. But here is where it gets controversial. Lately, the organizers forced everyone to switch to digital tablets, and honestly, it's been kind of a disaster. You've got riders like Daniel Sanders visibly frustrated because, imagine this, you're doing 100 miles per hour across a massive sand dune, and suddenly your screen just freezes or goes black from the heat. Plus, they completely killed off the old map man strategy. Teams used to get the route the night before and would hire specialists to analyze every inch of the map while the drivers slept. Now, they hand you the digital map 15 minutes before the start. That's it. Zero prep time, just pure raw reaction. On top of that, the GPS isn't like Google Maps. It doesn't tell you where to go. It's essentially a high-stakes game of hide and seek. You're hunting for these invisible waypoints in the desert that only ping on your screen once you get within 800 meters. If you miss a regular one, you get slammed with a huge time penalty. If you miss a safety waypoint, you're disqualified. Game over. And just when you think it can't get harder, they throw in the marathon stage. This is the mechanic's nightmare, because the drivers leave the main camp for a remote spot where zero outside help is allowed. If you snap a suspension arm, the support truck isn't coming. You'll see drivers covered in grease, lying in the dirt, fixing their own cars. Then in 2024, they added the 48-hour chrono, which is just brutal isolation. The second the clock hits 4 p.m., you have to stop at the nearest break zone in the middle of nowhere. You camp out under the stars, totally cut off from the world, with no idea where your rivals are or who is winning until you start again at 7 a.m. It's just wild. So, there you have it. The Dakar Rally isn't just a race. It's a beast. It's a history lesson. It's a testament to the fact that humans are just a little bit crazy. What do you think? Could you survive a day in the Dakar? Would you pick a car, a bike, or a truck? Drop a comment below, and until next time.